All right, and shalom, shalom. So this is Micah with the King James Bible University. In today's lesson, and the topic is going to be focusing on this 12 tribes chart in Genesis 49. So overall, then we're going to be going through chapter 49 of Genesis to see what it's actually talking about according to precepts in Scripture, which then it's the characteristics that none of us should possess on this journey, and what Genesis 49 is not talking about, in which we're referring to this 12 tribes chart, and it's ignorantly taught by our people out here on these corners and on your YouTube streets and on highways and byways. So because of the length of time that I expect this video and this teaching to run, then I will have timestamps available on a playback for this video, and I'll have it divided into sections to assist you with the content navigation. And I know the main sections is going to be the main ideal and topic of chapter 49 of Genesis. Another section is going to be exposing the 12 tribes charts using precepts. Then we're going to have a factual identifier of who the people are. And then we're going to be precepting and going through Genesis 49. So without further ado, then right here on the left side of my screen, then I'm right here at Genesis chapter 49 and 1 and 2. And it reads, "So when Jacob called his sons and said, So gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days." So that befall, then it means encounter. So what they're going to encounter on the last days, and also us. "So gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father." So then what's going on in these first two verses is it's the passing down of information to each of the 12 sons concerning characteristics and ways that none of them and none of us should possess. So Jacob, who is Israel, is passing wisdom to these young men. And that's what a blessing is, then it's the giving of wisdom. So Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, is passing information to these men, similarly to how Isaac gave Jacob information concerning the strange women of Canaan, which we're going to look at. So then that's what the overall topic and focus of Genesis 49 is about.
In fact, let me show you something here. Let me just go here real quick. Hit on something real quick. Just come to thought. We're going to go to 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3. Same thing. We're going to look at this whole thing spiritually. Why? Because it's going to help us out on what we need to see. We're going to help us on what we need to see. It says, "Comparing I besought thee to abide still in Ephesus." You see what he's saying? So he's telling you, Ephesus, I'm going to tell you what it spiritually means. It means desirable ways. "I besought thee still to abide in your desirable ways of this place." But he's telling you, when I go unto Macedonia, unto the extended land, to make known those ways, he says that thou mightest charge some that they teach no other doctrine. No other doctrine. Why? "Neither give heed to fables and endless genealogies, which ministers Christians, that rather than godly edifying, which is in faith, so do, holding on to fables and nonsense genealogies." What tribe you from? No, not what tribe. Where your daddy from? Oh, my daddy from Tobago. You're Levi. Focusing on genealogies, such as Ephraim. Tell you how they do this. They'll say Ephraim, I believe it's the Puerto Ricans. They'll say Manasseh is the Cubans. They'll say Simeon is the Dominicans. Zebulans, I believe they got Guatemalans, and Gad is the American Indians. I tried to remember all of them. Reuben is the Somalians, which is crazy with Somali Indians, which is crazy within itself. Asher is Colombia. Issachar is the Mexicans, who was Aztecs, who they're getting ready to celebrate tomorrow, celebration of the dead, which is all the way against God, but that's okay. I'm telling you. And the folly are the Argentinians. Tell me. Can't make this up. What's worse, they have Reuben, they got him set up as an Indian. Now, I'm going to tell you what's crazy. Why all this is so crazy. Leah and Jacob was straight out black, hardcore black. You got Reuben, you got Simeon and Levi and Judah. It's from Leah and Jacob. How in the world did they get white? How in the world did they get Mexican? How in the world did they get... See, this ain't talking against them, but how did they get this way? And Judah somehow stayed black. Think about that. Think about that. The craziest one is Ephraim and Manasseh. I'm telling you, you can't make it up. They teach on it. Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph was married to an Egyptian. Ham children. Joseph is black. His wife was an Egyptian. She was black. All of a sudden, you got Puerto Ricans and Cubans. And I want to show you what they base it on. They base it on Hosea. They base it on this here. On Hosea 7 and 8. They base it on this. Actually, I got it highlighted. I got it highlighted because I guess when my study I was highlighting and stuff. It says Ephraim, he have mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake unturned. They say that's why you see light Puerto Ricans and dark Puerto Ricans. Dumbest doctrines you ever want to hear. And all that's telling you they not solid in doctrine. He's a cake unturned. His knowledge ain't all good. It's wavery. It's wavery. He's a cake unturned. And they say, no, see, he's unturned. That's why you got Puerto Ricans, they light and some of them dark. Dumb doctrines. Dumb doctrines. I'm telling you, you can't make it up. The Bible says this. The Bible says this. In Jeremiah chapter 13 says this. It makes it clear. Jeremiah 13, verse 23. Can an Ethiopian change his skin, or a leopard his spots? That may ye also do good, that are accustomed to do evil. He's just comparing them. Because we're accustomed to, we go away from the covenant. But they'll sit there and say, no, he's Puerto Rican now. From an Egyptian and a Hebrew. Telling you, you can't make this up. You cannot make these doctrines up. Meaning, I cannot sit there and lie on, because you can go see it. All you got to do is go to Google, go to the image and put in 12 tribe chart, and it's going to pop up everywhere. You can't make it up.
And all I can say to that is facts and amen, my brother. So then you was just touching up in just a few precepts on what I was just getting ready to follow up on, and you just beat me to the punch. So, I'm going to just play catch up and get to where you're at. So, just going back to this Genesis 49 and 1 and 2, then that's what the overall focus of this chapter is about. Then it's this information that Jacob is getting ready to pass on to his 12 sons concerning these characteristics that they shouldn't have, that they're going to encounter in the last days, and also to us that are alive today, what we may encounter. So then it's blessing these sons, giving them information on what they're getting ready to encounter. So, with Genesis 49 and 1 and 2, then I do want to run some comparisons. So when you see this, and you can, in other verses, and you can see what's going on with Genesis 49 and 1 and 2. So we're going to run some comparisons so you can see other examples of people are getting called and they're getting instructions on information on, what to do or what's going to befall them. So the first example then we're going to look at is going to be Genesis 28 and 1 and 2, and then we'll skip down to verse 5. So when Isaac called Jacob and blessed him, so he's given him information, and charged him, so he commanded him also, and said unto him, so thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. So arise and go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban thy mother's brother. Then we skip down to verse 5. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram unto Laban, to the son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. So then he's sending him away with instructions, and you see right in verse 5 that Jacob, then he's departing, and he's following through with what was commanded of him. So then this is not the part where we're going to start, me and Elder, tearing into this 12 tribes chart, exposing some of the holes that are there. But just for this quick sec, and let's go ahead and put the cart before the horse. So just with what Elder was talking about, with Jeremiah 13 and 23, now how in the world, did they turn white if we're holding to this 12 tribes chart, which we know that it's false? Then I'm going to show you a precept that backs what Elder then he was saying. So we're going to look at Tobit chapter 4 and verse 12. So beware of all whoredom, my son, and chiefly take a wife of the seed of thy fathers, and take not a strange woman to wife, which is not of thy father's tribe. For we are the children of the prophets. So Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So remember, my son, that our fathers from the beginning, even that they all married wives of their own kindred, and were blessed in their children, and their seed shall inherit the land. So then Abraham, then he married a woman of his own lineage, and so did Isaac with Rebekah, and so did Jacob with Leah, because that was his wife, and then also the 3 concubines that were after Leah. Then all of these women and these men, they were black people. So then you already know then I'm getting ready to go with this, what direction that we're heading in. So then it takes us right back to where, Elder left off at. Then I'm going to bring this back again full circle, and then we'll draw more precepts. So then we're heading back to Jeremiah. Then we're going to look at chapter 13, and we're returning back to verse 23. Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Then that's a question. We'll stop right there at that question mark. So you look at that, then that's that question. Can they change their skin? And just like the old saying is, then a black man is a black man all over the world. But you have fools running around here today believing that our physical features, then they adapt over a period of time based on our geographic region. So they believe in this adaptation that's taught and backed by science, which, then we have something special that's even sitting in our Bible concerning science. So then I'm going to run you over to 1 Timothy, and we'll look at chapter 6, and we'll go to verse 20. So, O Timothy, and, for the people that are listening to this, you put yourself there. So keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science falsely so called. Because then that's what the Bible has to say about science. Then that's how then the Bible then it defines science. Then it's vain babblings and oppositions to the truth. For an example, then they tell you that, the existence of everything today, then it's a Big Bang theory. You look in scripture, then it tells you that the word of God is what established everything that we see and that we've grown up with today. So science, and it opposes what's according to truth. So this is exactly why then we don't debate scripture or go outside and run outside of the Bible in search of information. Then it's telling us to avoid profane and vain babblings and oppositions of science falsely so called. And let's look at verse 21, because we don't want to leave no meat on this bone, which some professing have erred concerning the faith. And that's what's going to happen if you hold on to science. And then we got that period there, that's a full stop. So let me show you something that's truth and factual. Because then they think that our physical features, and, it can change over a period of time based on a geographic region. And then you even have some of our women that believe that, this black woman, then they have this mitochondria type gene where they can just give birth to all other sorts of nations, and that's not true. Then it's not bagged anywhere in scripture, but this is what's here. So we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1 in verse 11 and 12. So when God said, so let the earth bring forth grass, so the herb yielding seed and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. So then this is the way that God has in this particular creation set up. And the earth brought forth grass, and the herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, so works, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So we know through scripture that we cannot see God physically because no flesh can look at eternity. However, we can see the works and wisdom of God through his creations. And concerning these trees, the instructions for that very tree to grow in wisdom and to end up bearing fruits, so good works, and the leaves and coverings to protect it from the sun and the heat, then it's within the seed, which is the word. So because God doesn't mix his word, neither will any natural tree made by God. So I'm not speaking for in any of these genetically spliced trees, or what man does. Then I'm speaking for the natural trees that God has created. Then an apple tree, then it would only bring forth apples. So a banana tree, only bananas. A pear tree, then it's only pears. And a pecan tree, then it's only pecans. So this can be proven because it's sitting right here in scripture. And it can be seen. And this, however, is not the case with science's claim on physical adaptation based on one's geographic location. So this breakdown just alone by itself, and it destroys the authenticity of those 12 tribes charts that you see a lot of these Hebrew camps running around with. So, we put the cart before the horse for a sec. Now then we're getting ready to return back to what we were doing, and we were looking at comparisons where you can see other verses where somebody is receiving information. So then the last verse that we had left, and we were at Genesis 28, 1 and 2, and then we skipped down to verse 5, and that was the last precept that we had looked at, just looking at other examples of people getting information. We're going to look at another one, and we'll go to Deuteronomy, and we will head over to chapter 31, and we'll look at verses 27 through 29. So this is another example right here. So Deuteronomy 31 and 27 through 29. And this is Moses speaking to the people and the chief of the tribes and the officers. For I know thy rebellion and thy stiff neck, which that neck, then that's talking about your acts and ways. So we got stiff acts, we got stiff ways. Behold, while I am yet alive with you this day, you have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death? So gather unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to record against them. For I know that after my death you will utterly corrupt yourselves, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall. So there's that befall right there. So evil will encounter you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger through the works of your hands. So in this verse, Moses is putting some words, so the knowledge, in the ears of this people concerning why evil is going to encounter them because of the works of their hands, which they will do. So for the Hebrew brothers and sisters out here that's listening to this that ain't seen precepts like this before, then there's no reason to wonder why our lives are often riddled with so much tribulation and trouble. Then you're looking at your answer right there in Deuteronomy 31 and 27 through 29. And if you want some foreground information, then I can give that to you as well. So we'll skip all the way up to verse 16, and we will look at verse 17. So when the people, wow. So when the Lord said unto Moses, so behold, so thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, and this people will rise up and go a whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, whether they go to be among them, and will forsake me. So it's going to forget him and break my covenant which I made with them. Then my anger shall be kindled against them in that day, and I will forget them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall, so encounter them, so that they will say in that day, so are not all these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us. It's exactly what we do today. Then, why is there so much evil in the world today? Then why is God letting all of this happen? Why do we have it so bad? Why is my life so hard? And that's your answer right there. So, you see, we've ran already in these examples of other, just clarification verses where you see somebody then is giving information to another person. So then you have the giver of the information, and then you have the receiver. Then that's what's going on in Genesis 49 and 1 and 2. Now then we're getting ready to move on to a second part of this lesson. So we're going to now start focusing on what Genesis 49 is not about, which is this 12 tribes chart that a lot of these Hebrew camps run around with. So for a sec, then we did put the cart before the horse, and now then we're getting ready to jump full swing into this. So we're going to go to Matthew, and we'll head over to chapter 23, and we will look at verse 1 all the way down to 8. Then spoke Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, so saying, so the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So what's going on here is he's letting you know that these scribes and these Pharisees, and these are false teachers that are sitting in Moses' seat. So they're sitting in these judgment seats, calling themselves to be teachers and leaders of the people, and they're not, because they're teaching something that's false. In verse 3 it says, all therefore whatsoever they bid you, then you observe. So you just watch that, observe and do. And what it's telling you right here with this part, with this comma going to the semicolon, you just watch what they do, but you don't actually do it, because but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. So they're hypocrites. So meaning that, what you see, then it's a false image. Then they're portraying then a false image. Then that's what that is. So you see them, these camps, and they have these costumes on, and they have these large fringes on their clothing, and it's on the outward side too. Then your fringes, and they're supposed to be only for you to know, but they wear their stuff outwardly so they can be seen. And they walk around with these huge displays with the 12 tribes charts, which they'll end up drawing you. Then if you go to where their setups are at, and that's how they draw you in with the big chart. And they desire to have this preeminence, so they have this seat of authority over the men and women, and they teach for reward. So this is why when you go to their channels and they have the super chats going, and they're taking cash apps and other sorts of money, and we're not supposed to be teaching for any sort of reward. but they have their channels monetized and they end up doing those things. And I'm not bearing false witness, and I've seen it before. And also another reason why then it benefits them, and it's such an advantageous gain for them to end up including many different nations with their little false 12 tribes chart false doctrine is the more people that they have drawn into this confusion, that's the more money that they can extract. So then it advantages them to end up having all of these other nations in here so you can get something out of them. So everything that I had said right here, then it can be traced right here in verses 5 through 8 of Matthew 23. So, but all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their cyclitaries and enlarge the borders of their garments. Exactly in what I got through saying. So they wear these long robes, and they have those hats on their head, and they have their wraps on, and they have their fringes right on the outward side, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts. So then they love to be looked at as leaders and chiefs and captains and bishops and all of this other stuff. In the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, so rabbi, so that's master. But be ye not called rabbi, for one is your master, and that's Christ. And all you are brethren, so then we're all equals, but they love to be exalted over their brethren. So now then we're getting ready to hit verse 23.
I'm telling you, we in a world of hurt. We in a world of hurt, you guys. We in a world of hurt on this, because that's all we basing everything on. And he said this. Yahweh said this, and we're going to look at Matthew chapter 23, picking it up at 23, and just to see something he actually stated on this. Something he actually stated on this. It says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites." Hypocrites. And to make sure we clearly understand what's going on, why he's saying scribes and Pharisees, both of them teach false doctrines. So you can see scribes as Christian churches, Pharisees as camps. You can switch it around, however you want to see it. But they're saying they're hypocrites because they teach in contrary to what Scriptures actually says. And they're using theatrics, pretending to be something that they're really not. That's why they put on robes, and that's why I'm using them too. Because they put on robes and everything else, but then you see camps put on costumes. Theatrics. Pretending to be something they're not. Making you pay tithes, making you doing something else. And it says what? Ye pay tithes of mint, anise, and cumin, and ye have omitted the weightier matters of the law. Judgment, mercy, faith, those ought to have done and have left and have leave the others undone. This is what we do. And just to be a little bit more about this, mint, the reason why they're going to use mint is why it's a sweet smelling thing. So it's a sweet smelling, but it stinks to God. See, a lot of people are not saying that. Same thing is they use anise. Why are they using anise? Because that's something why these scribes and Pharisees was doing on what it's talking about. These people is using something that's grown wild and naturally in those parts. Look how crazy this is. So they don't have to put no money out. They get this freely. It grows wild. Grows like weeds in your yard. And you got cumin. Herbs used for seasoning. So they're going for something they found around the house. Translate to the same thing when they tell you when they need money. Because that's what I say. They're going to make you pay tithes with money. Because they need money. They need their new car. They need their new boat. They need their new plane. And don't forget, I just said they need more money. And they leave out the weightier matters of the law. They leave them undone, meaning this. It don't change. Go right back to Deuteronomy. What do they leave unchanged? We're going to look at it. Deuteronomy chapter 10. And picking it up right at verse 12. It says, "O now Israel, what do the Lord require of thee? But to fear the Spirit of thy God, and to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Spirit of thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul." Weightier matters. And actually, another weightier matter is this. Another weightier matter is this. Oh, wait a minute. There go another weightier matter. We're going to go to Leviticus chapter 19, picking it up at verse 18. Actually, it's already highlighted. I changed it to the yellow, to where we can see it. It says, "Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against thy children of thy people." You see what he's saying? Against the children of thy people. Against Jacob, kids. "But thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Spirit of God." You see how he kind of specifically telling you his people is Jacob, and don't you do nothing to his children. People say, "I didn't even know that was in my Bible like that." It's always been there. And see, and now when they base it on the simple genealogies, because we done left out the weightier matters, and he's telling you right there, what is it? Mercy, faith, ought to be undone. We done left them undone. What does it tell you over here what we have to be doing? What do he require of us? To walk in all his ways. You got to have faith. You got to have some faith. We not doing that. We're not doing that. And they do it based on affiliations in groups and being part of a church. And they do that because they don't want that money to stop. Telling people they got tribes from Mexico and stuff like this. Really.
All right. So now then we're getting ready to move on to the next part of this lesson. So now, from here, then we need to focus on Jacob and that name change and what it means and how the name functions. So then just doing this right here in 49, it'll make Genesis 49 also understandable with what's going on over there. So Jacob, then it means supplanting the ways. And Jacob, then when you do the study on him, then he ended up overcoming flesh the same way which we all must do if we want to be joined to a God as he is. So then we're going to open up with Idris. Then we're going to head over to 2nd Idris. Then we're going to look at chapter 3. And we'll go to verse 13 through 16. And just see how things is rolling. "So now when they lived so wickedly before thee, thou didst choose thee a man from among them, whose name was Abraham." So you see how God, then he's choosing one from amongst these multitudes. "Him thou lovest, so he promised, and unto him thou showest thy will, and made an everlasting covenant with him, promising him that thou wouldest never forsake his seed. And unto him thou gavest Isaac, and unto Isaac also thou gavest Jacob and Esau." So we got these two here. "As for Jacob, thou didst choose him to thee, and put by Esau. And so Jacob became a great multitude." So then we have a lot to unpack there at verse 16 of 2nd Idris chapter 3. Because, for after all, then Esau, then he is the oldest. And you see right there in this verse, and it's telling you that God, then he chose Jacob and put Esau by. So then we have to start digging in and doing some investigating and see what happened and what's going on and what that means for us right there. Because he chose Jacob and he put Esau by. So we have to head over to Proverbs from here. Then we'll go to Proverbs, and we'll go to chapter 8, and we will look at verse 17. "So I love them that love me, and those that seek me shall find me." So then this is what the Spirit, then it's saying, and this is Christ speaking, that then he's going to love them that love him. So he's going to promise them that promise him. Then this selflessness, then it's going to be showed towards them that are being selfless towards him in his will. Then this is what caused Esau to be put by. And we're going to start seeing this more and more with these precepts as we dig deeper into this. So then we're going to look at 2 Timothy, and we're going to go to chapter 2, and we'll look at verse 19 through 21. So, nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure. So, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. So then he knows which ones are truly his and which ones are not. And let every one that nameth the name, so the way, so you're going to call on that way of Christ, so the anointed way, depart from iniquity, so that's acts of sin. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and of earth, and some to honor and some to dishonor. Providing if a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, so sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. So then you have these similitudes of the gold and silver and the wood of earth, and the wood and earth. So one is to honor and the other one is to dishonor. Then we're going to end up seeing that also with Esau and with Jacob. So let's start with Esau real quick. And we're going to go to Hebrews, and we'll go to chapter 12. And from chapter 12, then we will look at verses 16 and 17. So Hebrews 12 and 16 and 17. Looking diligently, actually, then that's 15. Let me start at 16 and 17, and I went up an extra verse. So lest there be any fornicator or profane person as Esau, so who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. So then a piece of doctrine of the world, then he ended up casting off his birthright. For you know how that afterwards, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears. So then just within that birthright and these inheritances, then you're called to go into it, but doesn't mean that you're automatically chosen and cinched in to go to it. So inheritances, then they can be lost. And it was because of what Esau did, and he ended up choosing the things of the world over the things that are of God's will. So then he loved the world more than he did God. So we're going to end up looking at Sirach, and we'll head to chapter 10, and we'll look at verse 9. So then we're building on what we just seen in Hebrews. So why is earth and ashes proud? Then this is spiritual right there. Remember, then he made man from the dust of the ground. So then he's addressing us right there, then he's addressing man. There is not a more wicked thing than a covetous man. So this person that has the desire for the abundance of material and earthly things. So a covetous man. For such, so a covetous man, and one setteth his own soul to sell, because while he liveth, he casteth away his bowels. So your inward part and what was sown on you, because the God is not going to let you ride a fence. Then you're going to end up making an election. So you're either going to choose him or you're going to end up choosing a world. And this is what a lot of us do. Then we end up having a desire for the things of what's in this world, and we run after those, and you're going to automatically cast off then a law and all of the instructions and the covenants and everything that was ordained for us to keep while we're in this world. So then you end up choosing what's temporary over what's eternal. So from here, just building on from Sirach, then we'll go to 1 John, and we'll go to chapter 2, and we'll look at verse 15 and 16. So 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15 and 16. And this is why it tells us over here. So love not the world, so don't promise the world, neither the things that are in the world. So if a man promise the world, the promise of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, so the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And we can even extend down to 17. So when the world passes away, so it's temporary, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever, because the thing that you're keeping sown in you, then it's eternal. So then it's letting you know right there, then you can't serve two. Then if you're going to end up becoming a companion of this world, then you're going to be an enemy of God. So that's why then it tells you that when you end up running after the things of the world, being covetous, then you're going to end up casting your own soul for sale. From here, then we'll go to First Maccabees, and we will look at chapter 1, and we will look at verse 15. And actually, we could just go up to 11. But 15 is what we need to hone in on. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, so saying, so let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So then you want the peace and prosperity of what the nations have that are round about you. So this device that thought pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forth therein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs or the ways of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant. So you forgot it because you're doing the things that are the heathen, and joined themselves to the heathen, so you can't serve two, and were sold to do mischief. So let me put Sirach chapter 10 and verse 9 right here. So Sirach 10 and verse 9. So why is earth and ashes proud? So there is not a more wicked thing than a covetous man, for such as one setteth his own soul to sale, because while he liveth he casteth away its bowels. Then we're looking right here at an example of these men of Israel then that ended up joining themselves to the heathen, and they sold themselves to do mischief. From here, we'll look at Isaiah, because then they're deviating from what needs to be done. So right in here in Isaiah, then we'll head over chapter 1, and we will look at verse 17 and 18. Actually, we'll extend up to 16. So it says, wash you, so make you clean, so put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes, and cease to do evil. So learn to do well, and seek judgment, so doctrines and teachings. So relieve the oppressed, so the people that you see that's in bondage of these false doctrines, in bondage of the mind, in bondage of all of the elements of the world, and you free them if you have the truth, because the truth is what's going to set you free. Judge the fatherless, and plead for the widow. So come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, so it's compared with that color, they shall be as white, so clean as snow. So then it's this whiteness, so it's going to be clean and white, pure and white. So is that snow, then that's pureness, whiteness. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool, so as the truth. Then that's what that red then it signifies. And I've been doing a lot of these touching up on this verse, so the people that are newcomers, and they can draw this right back to what's going over in Genesis, because then all too often in error, people they exegete what's over in Genesis chapter 25. And I'm getting ready to show you what gets looked at the wrong way. So they look at this right here. Genesis 25 and 25. So when it first came out red, and they all know, look at this, white people, when they get mad, then they neck turn red, they face turn red, then they forehead turn red, then they just get red when they get angry. And that's not what that's saying. So it's saying the first came out all red, all over like in hairy garment, so he's covered in sin. And they called his name Esau. So something that we're going to look at that end up making it stick, and we're going to head over to verse 29, and we'll look at also 29 through 34. So when Jacob, then he sawed pottage, so then he was roasting something, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. So before we even go to verse 30, then there is something that we need to look at right here. So we're going to go to Galatians, and we'll go to chapter 6, and we'll look at verse 9. And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. So then you look back over here in verse 30, then it's the other way around with Esau. So when Esau came from the field, and he was faint, and Esau said to Jacob, so feed me, I pray you, with that same red pottage, and the same red pottage that Jacob, then he's burning. For I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And we're going to look at something else. Because with Esau, then he's doing things the other way around, and we're not supposed to be fainting in a well-doing. But you see, then he's coming in faint, and look how then he's refreshing himself then with this red pottage. So we're going to head over to 1st Esdras, because we got to get some clarification. Then we're going to go over to chapter 1, and we will look at verse 12. And they roasted the Passover with fire, as appertaineth. As for the sacrifices, they sawed them in brass pots and pans with a good Savior. So then it's Passover, then that means then you're passing over from the other side, and you're passing over from this life unto Christ. So then it's red polished, and that's then this knowledge, and this bad knowledge that Jacob then he's ended up roasting, and he's sodding. And Esau, then he wants to be fed with this stuff. So we're going to look over in verse 32 all the way down to 34. Well, actually, then we missed 31, so we got to go to 31 as well. And Jacob said, so sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, so behold, so I am at the point to die. And what profit shall this birthright do to me? So then you're seeing that he's casting the birthright off for this morsel of meat. Then the same knowledge that we're supposed to be burning off, then he wants to be fed with it. And Jacob said, so swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau so bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So then that was why then I was building up with the things that I was building up with. So then he loved the more the doctrines and the ways of the world. Then he despised his birthright. Then he was covered in sin. So then what that means, for the people that are, holding on to other doctrines, and Esau, then he's not the white man, then that's our brother. And, something else that just hit me. And we're going to go to Deuteronomy 23, because even if it were the other way around, which it's not, there's something sitting in Deuteronomy that would still catch all of these camps and all of these other folks that have access to grind with the white man. So then we're in Deuteronomy, and we will look at chapter 23, and we're verse 7. So thou shalt not abhor an Edomite. And that's the end of that thought. And there's nothing to subtract there, nothing to add there. For he is thy brother. So even if we want to end up looking at it the way that the camps look at it, where they're interpreting Esau to be the white man, there's still an error if that were the case, because Esau then is telling you that's your brother. So then can't get around it any way whatsoever. But Esau, then he's not the white man. But this is what's going on with Esau. And just to bring it back full circle, then we'll head back over to 2nd Esdras, and we will look at chapter 3, and we'll go to 16. This is why Esau got put by, because he loved the world more than the birthright and the covenants and all of the taking heed to the instructions. So now then we have to look at Jacob, which now we'll head over to chapter 28, and we will head to verse 20 down to 22. And Jacob vowed a vow, which you don't see that Esau then ever vowing vows to God. Jacob vowed one. And Jacob vowed a vow, saying, so if God will be with me, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread, so that bread that's doctrine to learn, and a raiment, so a covering, so then he wants to be covered with that spirit, so that I come again to my father's house in peace. Because, we got kicked out of the garden, and we're trying to get back there. It's the only way that you're going to end up being there, and you learn to do well. Then shall the Lord be my God, so my guide, because then you're going to be guided with that doctrine and with that spirit. And this stone, so that path which I set for a pillar, and a pillar then that's a teacher spiritually, shall be God's house. And of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the 10th unto thee. So then he's making a vow. Just to expand on what was going on in verse 22, then we'll tie in some precepts there. So we're going to go over to Proverbs, and we'll look at chapter 3, and we will go to verse 9. So Proverbs 3 and 9. So honor the Lord thy God with thy substance, and with all the first fruits of all thy increase. So then everything that you're learning, then you're going to end up honoring the Lord with those things that you learned. Then it ties into like that old saying, with great, to whom much is given, much is required. With much power, then it comes much responsibility. So the more that you're learning of the things that are pleasing unto the Most High, then that's what you're going to honor Him with those works. We can also expand on this, and we'll go to Deuteronomy, and we'll look at chapter 16, and we will go to verse 17. So every man, so that's M-A-N, so that's male and female. Then that man, M-A-N, that mankind, that's male and female. So every man shall give as he is able. Got that comma there, so it's getting ready to give us clarification on what was just said. According to the blessing, so the giving of the knowledge of the Spirit of thy God, which he has given thee. So according to that rate, then that increase that he's increased you with, then you have to tithe. So you're offering that back. Then that's how then you do these tithes to the Creator. Then it's not money. Then he doesn't need our money. Then this is what he wants, and to be honored with the portion of the blessing that he's given us. Then you're honoring him with all of your substance and the first fruits of your increase. So Jacob, then he did this. Then Esau, then he did not. So this is why then he ended up getting put aside. Was because of that reason right there.
Clarify some things as we go down. I want to make sure we clarify some things. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 32. Genesis 32, and we're going to talk about it. 32, and we're going to look at verse 28. 32 and verse 28. Showing you something here that you're going to make gonna shock a lot of people. He said this. He said, thy name should be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince has thy power with God and with men, and has prevailed. Jacob prevailed. Not Reuben. Not Simeon. No, Jacob prevailed. So get it. So as we go in, just make sure you understand that, because that's singular, not plural. He have not dealt so with any nation, and as for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Spirit of God. But he get better. It's going to get better. And what Jacob did is the catch. See, Jacob divided his inheritance on what he prevailed on. He divided that between the 12 sons. Actually, let me show it to you. Make sure we all on the same page. Let me show it to you. Make sure we all on the same page. Let me make sure we all on the same page. We're going to look at Sirach. And we're going to go to Ecclesiastes chapter 44, and we're going to look at verse 23. Verse 23. See, we're just proving points here. And it says this. It says, and made it rest upon the head of Jacob, which we see there. He acknowledged him. He didn't say them. Him in his blessing, and gave him a heritage. Jacob, what you see over there, he showed his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel, which it showed him right here, and divided his portion among the 12 tribes. Did he part them? That's what happens. That's what happened. And what he did, he gave him a heritage, and Jacob divided his heritage into an inheritance to his 12 sons. Now, everybody know an inheritance has no guarantee. An inheritance is not guaranteed, because you can lose it. You can lose an inheritance. Jacob was acknowledged, and his election was made sure with God, and his blessings was given. However, Israel divided it among 12 sons. So he acknowledged his sons, and the main reason he gives this verse. Actually, we're going to go to that verse. Let's go to that verse. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to show you what he did here. We're going to see what he did here. We're going to look at this Genesis chapter 49, picking it up at verse 1. It says, Jacob called his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. He's telling them, y'all got to get ready for something. Y'all want this inheritance that I'm coming up on? Okay, I'm going to tell you what's going to befall you. I'm going to tell you the problems that you guys got, that you guys need to get corrected. He says, gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Meaning this, if you want salvation and you want to have this seal upon yourself, you must prevail something. You got to prevail in this world. See, this is an individual thing. This is not a group thing. That's why he says, the multitude, no, you wasting your time. And this is one of our biggest problems we have. This is one of our biggest problems we have. So as we looking at this, as we understand what's going on right now, still putting keys together. See, when we look at this as a whole, we're gonna look at Exodus chapter 23. We're gonna pick it up at verse 2. And one of our biggest problems is tell us. It says, thou shalt not follow the multitude to do evil. You shall not follow the multitude to do evil. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after to rest judgment, doctrines and teachings. Yahushua came to follow Christ to be a disciple. And to be a disciple is to emulate something. And he came to emulate Christ. Not being a follower of the mass is what you see right here. Everybody was following scribes and Pharisees. He didn't come to do that. He came to the house of the lost sheep of Israel, came to save which was lost. Came to make sure he can straighten out what was there to where he can be an example for us. But many of us are going to follow the multitude. Think about it. We think on names and not the covenant. What tribe you from? I'm saying, you can imagine, go in some of them camps. You can imagine them saying it. I should ask my wife, what tribe you from, baby? She looking at me like I'm crazy. But this is what they do. They want to know what tribe somebody from. Where your daddy was born. Where your daddy was born. Wherever you was born, that's what you are. You look at 2nd Esdras, chapter 2. We're going to look at verse 1 to 7. And I want you to pay real close attention to this. Real close attention to this. This is why it's going to be so important. Once it sit in, we should get it. It says, thus said the Creator, I have brought this people out of bondage and gave them my commandments by men servants, the prophets. You see what he did? He did this. But we don't want to listen. See, we as a whole, we don't listen. But watch what he says. Whom they would not hear, but despise my counsel. Tell me we don't do it. Either you're going to call God a liar, or you got to sit there and confess up. He says more. He says, the mother that bare them said unto them, go your way, ye children, for I am a widow and forsaken. Y'all out there doing shading. I'm forsaken. Y'all just shady as all get out. Michael, get up out of here. Get up. Michael, you just shady. You and your brother, y'all done went up in that store. Y'all gonna play magic tricks. Stealing in the store. Not exemplifying me none. I was just talking to Elder Jenkins earlier. I didn't even want to bring it up, but it ended up popping up still. We sitting in church, being hell raisers in the church. My wife talking about saying we was a bunch of heathens. Sitting there talking about we wasn't that bad. We getting whooped by the mothers of the church. Forsaken. But it gets better. It gets better. It says, I brought you up with gladness, but with sorrow and heaviness have I lost you. I'm telling you, we can't make this up. It says more. For ye have sinned before the Creator, your God. Michael baby. See, that's what my brother used to call me. Michael baby. Let's do this. You won't do what my dumb butt do? Okay. Michael baby, let's do this. Okay. Michael baby, my mama asked you who did this? Say you did it. Okay. I'm little bit. That's just what we do. And done that thing that is evil before him. But what shall I now do unto you? I am a widow and forsaken. Christ is telling you out of his own mouth, he's a widow and forsaken. I'm only pausing for effect. That's it. My wife over there grinning like, see, you and your brother, y'all was heathens. That's why Christ bounced on y'all. But it got more. It says, go your way, O my children, ask for mercy of the Lord. And then she actually said that. Y'all need to be praying to God. But it gets better. It says, as for me, O Father, I called unto thee for a witness over the mother of these children, which would not keep my covenant. You see what was lost. He goes right back to the covenant, but watch it. It gets better. It gets better. It says that thou bring them to confusion. We over in Babylon, and the last one we hooked up with was Nebuchadnezzar. I'm going to bring them to confusion, and their mother to a spoil. Me and our spirit's going to be to a spoil. Actually, tell you what you do. Think about this. You got some of these guys who got some of these athletes. They'll sit there and they'll pay some athletes. Some athletes you got, they making $500 million over a 5-year period. They'll pay them. People say, oh man, look how you getting paid. Okay, think about this. If he's paying him and he got a teammate of 13 to 40 more people and they paying him $500 million, what do you think that heathen's getting? It's a drop in the bucket. But anyway, it says that they may be no offsprings of them. I'm going to change this color on this one because I want you to see this clearly. Actually, it took all that. But it says in verse 7, it says, let them be scattered abroad among the heathen. Let their names be put out from the earth. For they have despised my covenant. I'm Judah. Let's put out, bro. Oh, I'm Zebulun. Just put out, bro. Oh, I'm from Naphtali. Put out. Put out. He ain't focusing on the tribe of men. Meaning this. Let's look at this. And you got a lot of camps. I know you got some of them over here. They sitting there, they wasting your time. What tribe you from, man? Where your daddy from? Oh, my daddy from Jamaica. Oh, you're this. No, that's not the truth. The tribe is a lie, and the ones telling you that is a lie.
All right, yeah, shalom. Then I got to jump back in here real quick. A lot of stuff was said that I just got some precepts that I want to end up piggybacking and jumping off of. So then a lot was said, with the second of Jeresh, chapter 2 and verse 1 through 7. So, the takeaway, we're going to look at a precept. And, the point that I'm driving with this first precept is the election, and it doesn't stand by flesh, because if that was the case, then we wouldn't be scattered, where we are right now. Then we got put out because of, just the works of our hands and us being shadied. And as the elder had brought out, what we had did, just forsaking the covenant, being adulterous, being treacherous. So this is something else that you can stick with this second of Jeresh, chapter 2 and verse 1 through 7. So we're going to head over to Galatians, and we are in chapter 3, and we will look at verse 16 through 18. So it says, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. So he said not into seeds, plural, as of many, but as of one, into thy seed, which is a Christ. So, this election, and it's going to stand by the promise and not by the works of the law. That's why it tells you right over here, we'll look at Matthew, and we'll look at chapter 22, and we will look at verse 14. So Matthew 22 and 14 says, for many are called, but few are chosen. So many, then they are called to this inheritance, but then if your works and your standing of flesh and it's not of the promise, then you're going to be overturned. And that's exactly, what happened with Esau. Then he got put by, which, this a precept, and I left it out, but I'll end up, I believe I may have used it, can't remember. It's so deep into the lesson now. I'll just bring it back. I believe I did use it. Ezekiel 21 and 27. So I will overturn and overturn and overturn it, and it shall be no more until he comes who right it is, and I will give it him. So just going back to Galatians 3 and 17, it says, in this I say that the covenant, so this contract that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul. that it should make the promise of none effect. For if the inheritance be of the law, so of flesh and outwardly, it is no more of promise, but God gave it Abraham by promise. So, which should bring up verse 19. So wherefore then serveth the law? Which is talking about all of the stuff that's over there in Exodus 20. All of the stuff that we're told not to do. It was added because of transgressions, till the seed should come to whom the promise was made, and it was ordained by angels in the hand of the mediator, so in the hands of this intermediary. So the angels, and they're going to be speaking these things and preaching these things that are given to them by the Spirit. So as far as this part right here, to the seed should come to whom the promise was made, you can look back earlier what Elder was talking about with these weightier matters in Deuteronomy 10 and 12 and Leviticus 19 and 18. Because as far as the law, we go to 1 Timothy and we go to chapter 1, and it tells you that the law, then it was not made for a righteous man, then it's made for these people right here. So knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for holy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, and for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. So that's why it's there. But this covenant, then it's not of flesh, then it's not of the law, then it's of the promise. And that's why then it says it, for if the inheritance be of the law, then it is no more of promise, but God gave it to Abraham by promise. So let's look at this right here. So we're going to hit John, and we'll go to chapter 8. Something that's real key that's sitting over here. So we got John chapter 8, and we will look at verse 39. They answered and said unto him, so Abraham is our father. So then there it is right there. And Jesus, so salvation said unto him, and unto them. So then it's the spirit that's inside of this man. So salvation said unto them, so if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. Because in this election, and it doesn't stand on flesh. They're not doing the works of the law. So watch this right here. So we have Genesis, and we will go to chapter 18, and we'll go to verse 19. For I know him, so this is Christ speaking, that he will command his children and his stronghold, meaning his whole household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, or the Spirit of God. Then the ones that the election is based on a promise, and not of flesh. And they shall keep the way of the Spirit of God, to do justice and judgment, so that justice, and that's that equity and that fairness, and judgment, doctrines, and teachings, and that's what they're going to be doing. And we got that semicolon there, so that's the end of that one. So then what does that mean for the flesh? And this is where now then we'll head over to Romans, and we'll go to chapter 9, and we'll look at verses 6 through 8. Not as though the word of God has taken none effect, for they are not all Israel which of Israel, so all skinfolk and kinfolk. Neither because they are the seed of Abraham, so of the flesh are they all children, but in Isaac shall the seed be called. And when you look at this, he had Ishmael and Isaac. Then Ishmael, then that was something that Sarah, then she ended up recommending that Abraham do because she wanted children. Most High had already promised Abraham that he was going to have a seed. So then Ishmael, then it was something they did according to the flesh, and Isaac, then that was something that was promised. That is, so they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise, and they're accounted for the seed. Which now We'll build on some more. Now we're going to go to Romans chapter 8, and we'll look at verse 9. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. So you're not being guided by that Spirit. And then, we'll finish this teardown with Galatians 5 and 24. And 25. And they that are Christ have crucified the flesh. So then you've put that off with the affections and the lust. So then you're not walking in the way of the world, even though we're in it. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Then that's what it is. Then with this Galatians 3 and 16 through 18. So many are called, but few then are chosen. And this takes us right back to Genesis, where now we're getting ready to enter the next part of this lesson. This is why then he's telling them, so gather yourselves together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. So, before then we officially start that next part of this chapter, and there is something that is very key that we need to look at, that we need to touch up on. Just to let you know that there is a problem, like those 12 tribes, and they have to do what Jacob did and have your way changed. So let's look at this. It's going to prove to you that there was a problem. So we're going to go to Genesis, and we'll look at chapter 35, and we will look at verse 2 through 4. Then Jacob, so that's one that supplants the ways, said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you. Bingo, right there. So all of these strange guides, then these strange customs and ways, and be clean and change your garments or your covering. Then you come out of that strange apparel, not being covered with the shadow of death. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, which Bethel then it means the house of God. And I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress and was with me in the way which I went. And this is key in verse 4. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hands. So these works of the flesh, then you have to put that stuff aside. Then these strange gods that were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears. So then we got to put off then these strange fruits, and also then these tickling itchy ear doctrines. And Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. So then I had to bring that one up right there. Right now then we're going to return back to Genesis chapter 49, and we'll look at verses 3 through 4. So then we're going to pick it up with Reuben. So it says, Reuben, so thou art my firstborn, then my might in the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. So unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. So he went up to my couch. So then with Reuben, part that's dressing him that we need to focus in on is this right here. It's on the first half of the semicolon, where it's saying unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, and what that means to you. So overall, then what that's telling you is then the people that has the same characteristic as Reuben are people that will go in every direction that the wind blow. Then it's saying unstable as water. So then when you look at water, and then you look at large bodies of water like seas, and you see that the waves, and they're carried, they blow in whatever direction that the wind is blowing them. So they're unstable. And then it's the same with these people that have no sort of rule over their spirit. So they go whatever direction that the wind blows. Then whatever new trend comes up, then they're getting caught up in it. Whatever new tickling itchy ear doctrine comes up, then they're the ones that's getting caught up in it. And instead of being rooted and stable, then this is a problem with people that have this characteristic as Reuben. And it's giving you an example of this instability of what he did. Then he slept with his father's concubine, in which then we're going to end up looking at this right here. So then we're going to head over to Genesis right over here on this other side, and we'll look at chapter 35 and verse 22. And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and laid with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard it. And that's the end of that thought. Then that's something that should not have been done. And you don't approach the nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother. So and now then we can look at another precept of how, people that were more stable, when they were in the same situation, and how they handled the situation when they were in it, and how Reuben should have handled the situation. So from here, then we'll go to Genesis chapter 39, and we'll look at verse 7 through 9. So, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Remember, so behold, my master's wote not what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. So everything that's in his power. So there's none greater in this house than I. So then he's also saying that he's greater than her too. Neither has he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. So how can then I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So right here in this verse, then Joseph, then unlike Reuben, then he remembered God with all of his heart, and he didn't do it. And let's look at another example of somebody that encountered a situation and they didn't end up becoming unstable. And we'll look at Susanna. And this is one that's worthy of being talked about, that doesn't get brought up as much, but then this is a good example right here. So we're going to look at Susanna chapter 1 and verse 6 through 9. And it says, So these kept much at Jehoiakim's house, and all that had any suits in law came unto them. Well, actually, let's go to verse 5. So 5 all the way down to 9. So the same year were appointed 2 of the ancients of the people, so 2 elders to be judges, such as the Lord spoke of, that wickedness came from Babylon from ancient judges, who seemed to govern the people. So these kept much at Jehoiakim's house, and all that had any suits in law came unto them. Now when the people departed away at noon, Susanna went into her husband's garden to walk. And the 2 elders saw her going in every day and walking, so that their lust was inflamed towards her. And they perverted their own mind, and turned away their eyes, that they might not look into the separated place, nor remember just judgment. So then they're being unstable. And albeit they both were wounded with her love, yet durst not one show another his grief. So then they're both got the same lust, but they're trying to hide it from the other. Then we're going to go to skip down to 19 and go through 24, and look what happened. Now when the maids were going forth, the 2 elders rose up and ran unto her, saying, So behold, so the garden doors are shut, that no man can see us, and we are in love with thee. Therefore consent unto us, and lie with us. If thou wilt not, we will bear witness against thee, so a false witness, that a young man was with thee, and therefore thou didst send away thy maids from thee. So they're getting proposing to set her up. Then Susanna sighed and said, "So I'm straitened on every side, for if I do this thing, it is death unto me, and just not in this life, but the one to come. And if I do it not, I cannot escape your hands. It is better for me to fall into your hands and not do it than to sin in the sight of the Lord." So then even in this situation, you see Susanna, then she's thinking about the second life and not the first one. So then she'd rather, which the Most High delivered her out of this situation anyway, but in this heat of the moment, and when these two options were there, then she would have went along with just dying in their hands and not committing a sin. So it is better for me to fall into your hands and not do it than to sin in the sight of the Lord. So with that, Susanna cried with a loud voice, and the two elders cried out against her. So now they're bearing these false witnesses. So, and this is Susanna. Then just alongside Joseph, then you're remembering the Most High, with all of your mind and with all of your heart. Then this is the contrary to what happened with Reuben, and he ended up landing with his father's concubine, then which it shows that instability there. So, these are two examples right here in Scripture, that I want to let sit in before then we ended up moving forward. So from here, then we'll leave Susanna, and then we'll go to James. So we're going to go to the book of James, and we're going to go to chapter 1, and we will look at verse 16. Let me see which. No, that's the wrong one. So Susanna chapter 1 and verse 6 through 9. Well, actually, we'll stop at 8. That's what I need. So, but let him act in faith, so nothing wavering. So then this is the problem with Reuben. So, and also with a lot of us, then we're wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, so driven with the wind. And that's where, then I got that earlier. Then these people that are unstable as water, then they're going to go whatever direction that the wind blow. You're getting carried about with every wind of doctrine, every sort of trend. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Then we'll skip down to verse 8. Being double-minded. So a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So then you're wresting doctrines and teachings, which we're not supposed to. Then you're supposed to remember the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Then if you're got these two laws warring against one another, then the spirit of the law of God, and then you have like the laws of flesh warring inside of your members, it's going to make you unstable. So let's look at something. Then we're going to go to Deuteronomy, and we'll go to chapter 16, and we will look at verse 19. So thou shalt not wrest judgment. So we're not wrestling doctrines and teachings. Like this is what I wanted to bring forth right there, and we can stop right there at that semicolon. Then we'll got something else that we'll go to. Then we could look at the book of Hebrews. So we're going to go to Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 22 and 23. So let us draw near with a true heart, full assurance of faith. So then a sincere belief in the word. So having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, so from evil thoughts. So like I said, you're not riding a fence, not being unstable. And our bodies washed with pure water, and let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering. And we'll stop right there at that semicolon. So this is then good wisdom and instruction on how to correct that problem, and that's concerning Reuben right there. Then we're not supposed to be wavering. Now we'll even return back to the book of James. So from here, then we'll go to James, and we'll go to chapter 1, and we'll go to 26 and 27. So if any man among you seem to be religious, and bridleth not his tongue, so his ways, his customs, and his truths, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion and it's vain. So pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this. So this is what makes it stand apart from a defiled, unstable religion. To visit the fatherless and widows. So these sort of spiritually, then they're separated from God in their affliction. So then you're visiting them, strengthening them, showing them the correct way, freeing them from whatever entanglements in the world that they're caught up in, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. So just as what we had seen with Susanna and with Joseph, then they're keeping their spirits and they're keeping their hands clean at all times from, blood. And we'll return and go back to the book of James, and we'll go to chapter 1 and verse, which we had already seen that, just this again. So for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. From here, we got 2 more precepts before then we're finished with Reuben. Then we'll head over to Proverbs, and we'll go to chapter 25, and we will look at verse 28. So he that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Because then if you don't have that spirit in subjection, then you're going to end up falling to your own demise, and it's going to bring you down to nothing, which we'll see this in this last precept. So we're going to go to Sirach. And we'll go to chapter 25. And we will look at verse 23 to 26. So a wicked woman, so this is talking about a spirit, abateth the courage, so maketh an heavy countenance and a wounded heart. Remember what we've seen in Hebrews 10 and 22 and 23, then we're supposed to have that full assurance of our faith in that heart. A woman that will not comfort her husband in distress maketh weak hands, so it's going to weaken your power, and feeble knees, so weak worship. Then your religion, and it won't be sincere and devout, and it'll be vain. Of the woman came the beginning of sin, so these wicked thoughts in the spirit, then that's not in subjection. And through her we all die. So give the water no passage, so not supposed to be unstable, neither a wicked woman liberty to gather abroad. If she go not as thou wouldest have her, so cut her off from thy flesh, and give her a bill of divorce or separation, and let her go. So the spirit, then you're supposed to end up swapping it out. And this is exactly what led to the downfall over there with Adam in Genesis chapter 2 and 3. Then we're supposed to be swapping these spirits out. Then if it's going to be working against us to do things that are not profitable to us. So then this is Reuben right here, and many of us. Alright, so now then we're going to leave Reuben, and we're going to head towards verses 5 through 7. So now we're looking at Simon and also Levi. So Simeon, and Levi are brethren, so then these are equals. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they diggest down a wall. So cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. So I would divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. So, before then we start explaining, what's going on with them. Just this last part of verse 7, Jacob, then he's saying that he has to do this. And the particular reason is that Simeon and Levi, they can't be together because of what they're capable of. So then these two right here, and this is not just them physically, then this is their children that comes up after them, then they were scattered and divided up throughout all Israel. So that 12 tribe charts, and that's another hole right there that's being exposed. Then the way that they have it, then I forget what they have for Simeon, but for Levi, then they're supposed to be the so-called Haitians. Then how can you prove that when Jacob, then he's telling you what he did, that he scattered them throughout all Israel? So then the way that they have that chart portion out, then this is telling you that that's another problem right there. But, touching on this right here, because there's a lot of questions about the instruments of cruelty, then there's other sorts of doctrines and other stuff out there about what that is. Let's tear this down. So we're going to hit 1 Corinthians, and we're going to look at chapter 3, and we'll head over to verse 16. And it reads, "So know ye not that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you?" So then we had to come here. So when you look at this habitations right here, then you're looking at that spiritually, then that's talking about your tabernacle, your body. So these instruments of cruelty, then if you want to see them, then they're right here. So this is number 1, anger, which I'll highlight that one, and this is the other one right there, the wrath. Then those are the instruments of cruelty right here that Israel, then he's warning Simeon and Levi about, what they're going to encounter that could be their downfall. So over here at the KJBU, then we talked about these two feelings, these two emotions right here. Then we had talked about this, and this was covered in another lesson. But for people that didn't record the information, and just take out your pencils, pens, papers, and you can jot it down this time. So the anger, then that's an outward feeling of intense provocation. Wrath, then that's an inner feeling of intense provocation. So then what separates those two is then one is outward, the other one is inward. So anger, then it's accompanied by physical responses. Wrath, then it's accompanied by thoughts of recompense and vengeance. So right over here, we're going to use this right side, and we'll head back over to Genesis, and we'll look at chapter 34, and we'll look at 1 and 2. So we got to start right from the beginning and see what happened and what's the circumstance, what's going on. So and Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the sons of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and laid with her and defiled her. So this is what happened. Now then we're going to look at verses 7 through 10. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel in laying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done, which we're going to touch up on that in a minute. But right here, then you see, then it's giving you like an example of this outward response, then it's outward feeling of intense provocation. You see that the men, then they're very wroth and they're grieved. So this grieved, and that's angered because of how then he just did their sister like a harlot. And Hamor communed with them, saying, So the soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. So I pray you give him to wife, and make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you, and you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therein, and get you possessions therein. So then we just saw like an example of that anger, that outward expression of intense provocation. Now then we're going to look at an example of wrath right here. So we're going to skip down to verses 14 through 17. And they said unto them, well, actually, we missed something, so we got to look at 13. So 13 all the way down to 17. So and the sons of Jacob answered Shittim and Hamer his father deceitfully. And that's it right there. And the reason why they're answering, not a right, and it's a lie to end up overthrowing them later is because they already have thoughts. Then they've already thought about what they're going to do. Then they're getting ready to take matters into their own hands. So you see, then they're answering deceitfully because of this inward wrath that they already have for these people based on what happened to Dinah. So they answered his father deceitfully and said, because he had defiled Dinah their sister, and they said unto them, so we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us, but in this we will consent unto you. So if you will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised, then we will give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone. So now then we have to move further and see how this deceit then bring it out so we can see what's going on. So we're going to head over to Romans, and we'll go to chapter 2, and we will look at verse 28 and 29. For he is not a Jew, Jude, and that means follower of Christ, which is one outwardly. Neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh. So then what the men of Jacob are, requiring these men of the land to do, to end up doing a circumcision outward in a flesh, because that's just a sign of what the actual circumcision is actually about. But he is a Jew, so this is verse 29, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of God. Whose praise is not of men, whose praise is not of men, but of God. So, then I want to show something, and if I remember where it's at, then I believe it's in Galatians, and we'll look at chapter 3, and it's telling you right here, verse 24 and 25. So wherefore the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. So then what you see the males doing, being circumcised, and that's just a sign of what the actual circumcision looks like. Then the real one is you remove the flesh of the foreskin of your heart and be no more stiff-necked. Not to be hard-headed, stand to your own customs, your ways, and your own acts. Because also then you have to keep in mind that the women, they have to be circumcised too. Then they don't have the same members as a man does. So then this is not outwardly in the flesh, and it's a spiritual circumcision. Just like as it's saying, but after that faith has come, we are no longer under a schoolmaster. So what's going on, and now we have to build up on this some more. Then we'll look at Exodus. So I'm going to give you an example of how they twisted these men up, because they're wanting them to do the circumcision outward in the flesh, which all that's going to happen is all of those men are going to be sore. This is an example of what it's actually about. So we're in Exodus chapter 12 in verse 48 and 49. And when a strangers, and these are talking about Ham's children, shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall learn thereof. So one law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. So what that's saying is then these strangers, which, actually, then I can explain it better. So we'll go to Ruth, because then it'll come out way better than if I just show the precept versus So I can show a precept and it'd come out way better than just trying to merely explain it. So then what we'll do is then excuse me, we're going to look at Ruth chapter 1, and we'll look at verse 16 and 17. So getting an example of this right here, where it's joining on to us and keeping a Passover. So here we are in Ruth. So Ruth chapter 1 and verse 16 and 17. So and Ruth said unto me, and Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. Then we look back over here in Exodus 12 and 48 and 49, and what it's saying concerning Ham's children, and if they're going to end up serving our God, keeping our Passover and keeping the judgments that were appointed to us, then they're going to be counted as one that's born in the land. Now, to disclose something, just to go on record, then this is not talking about Japheth's children, then this is talking about Ham's children. So then if they're going to do this thing, then they're going to be counted as one that's born in the land. And just to make sure that, we're all tracking, what we'll do is we'll bring this back up on the left side. So we have to return back to Genesis 34 because we're dealing with these Hivites. Then this is what Shittim and also the son of Hamor, then they're Hivites. So just to make sure that we're dealing with Ham's children, then we're going to prove things with scripture. So we'll head over to Genesis chapter 10 and we'll look at verse 6. And the sons of Ham, so we got Cush, Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. Now from here, then we'll go down to verse 15 through 17. And Canaan begat Zidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgasite, and the Hivite. Then this is exactly what we're dealing with over here in Genesis 34, these Hivites. So then they are strangers of the sons of Ham, but the circumcision that were being required of them in Genesis chapter 34, which actually we're here, then all that they did was they were circumcised outwardly. Then you got to remember right here that they answered Shechem and Hamor deceitfully. So then you just don't let that escape you right there. So then all they did was they just did it outward in the flesh, and that's not a true circumcision. Now, since we're on this topic, then we're going to look at 2 Samuel, and we'll go to chapter 11, and we'll go to verse 3. And David sent and inquired after the woman, and one said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Then Uriah the Hittite, then that's when we return back over to Genesis chapter 10, and we go down to verse, that I went too far, 15. That's these people right here. So then Uriah, which that means that that's the light of Yahweh, then he's a Hittite, and this is somebody that was joined to our people, then that served the Lord as that was his God, and then he followed after the Passover, and he kept the judgments and what was appointed of Israel, then he was as one born in the land. So just to give you that example of there, that then when Ham's children and they're joined to our people and they're keeping our Passover and they're worshiping our God, then they're counted as one that's born in the land. And with Ham's children, then you are allowed to make marriages with them, then only if they're doing that. Then if not, as with this case over here that's in Genesis 34, we're not supposed to be doing that. So then what's going on is Now, then we're going to end up from here. Then we're going to look at verses 24 down to 30. Then that's where we have to go from here. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out of the gates of his city, and every male was circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city. So, on their side, Ham and Shechem, then they're believing that this is what they have to do to end up being joined to the people. But once again, in that circumcision, the one that counts, and it's the one that's inwardly in the heart and not outwardly. So when it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, so Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword, and came upon the city boldly, and slew all the males. And they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword. So then this is another example right here of this wrath and this outward feeling of this intense provocation. And you see then the actions that's being manifested. Then they're actually killing people now. And they slew Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. And they took their sheep, and their oxen, and their asses which was in a city, and that which was in a field, and all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, so you have troubled me to make me stink among the inhabitants of the land. So what's going on here, when we return back to Genesis 49, the problem with them, as well as a lot of us, is that we can also have this anger and this wrath, which these two emotions, and they can move you and sway you to do things that'll get you in trouble. Because with Simeon and Levi, then they took this into their own hands. It tells you in their self-will, they destroyed and overthrew that city. Then the Most High, regardless of whether they would have done that or not, then he would have done it himself, because he tells you that vengeance, it belongs to him. So, from this, we need to look at Sirach. Tells you, and this is something that we all need to keep in mind. So then we'll head over to Sirach chapter 1 and verse 22. So a furious man cannot be justified, for the sway of his fury. So that sway, then another word for that, the motion of his fury shall be his destruction. Then that's what happens then when you have then that anger then resting in your bosom, then it's resting in your inward parts. Then if you let it, then it'll sway you to end up doing things that'll get you in trouble. From here, we can even hit Ecclesiastes, and we'll go to chapter 7, and it tells you right here, so be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. From here, then we can also head over to Proverbs, and we'll look at chapter 29, and we'll actually, then that's the wrong verse, wrong one. So I believe it's the wrong one. Let me see. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 24 and 25. So it tells you, so make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. So lest thou learn his ways, and get a snare to thy soul. So you don't want to learn those ways. of men that are furious, then just what we've seen in Sirach, then 1 and 22, then the sway of his fury, then it's going to be his destruction. Then so even with Abel and Cain, then what happened with Cain and his anger, then he ended up slewing and killing his brother. So then this is something that we have to keep in mind with Simeon and Levi, and just make sure that we're always mindful of these instruments of cruelty, this anger and this wrath, then on our journeys. From here, now then we have to move down further, and we will look at verses 8 all the way down to 12. And it reads, So Judah, so thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. So thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies, so thy power shall be in the ways and acts of thine enemies. So thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. So from the prey, my son, thou art gone up. And he stooped down, and he couched as a lion, and as a old lion, who shall rouse him up. So then we're going to stop right there at verses 8 and 9 and unpack some stuff here before we move to 10 through 12. So this is the problem with a lot of these camps right here. Then it's saying Judah is a lion's whelp. And, you can comment, and if you saw it before, and I know I've seen it myself, then you have a lot of our brothers, and they walk around with these chains on, and they have pendants and pieces on chains, and it has that line there, and you ask them what the line is for, or not, it's for Judah. And you can run them right here to Genesis 49 and 9, and it's saying it's a lion's whelp. Then a whelp, then that is a cub. Then it's not a full-grown lion. Then it's a cub. And another thing, about these cubs that, people are probably not aware of is that in that stage of a lion's life, as the cub, then they're blind, they're helpless, and they're vulnerable. So then I'm pretty sure that information, and it's not, widely known about whelps, cubs, but at that stage in their life, then they're blind, then they're helpless, and they're vulnerable. So, they're relying on the guidance of their mother during that time, as far as guiding them in a way that they should go, and also preparing their food, or their milk for them. Then it's still on milk, not even meat. So now then we're over at Ezekiel, and we're going to look at chapters 19 and 1 through 3. So Ezekiel chapter 19, verse 1 through 3. So moreover, take thou up a lamentation for the princes of Israel, and say, So what is thy mother? So a lioness, and she lay down among lions, and she knoweth her whelps among young lions. So then she's going to be nourishing then these whelps then with this milk until they can be weaned from that. So they're still on milk, not even meat. And she brought up one of her whelps, and it became a young lion. So then these whelps, like I was saying, then it's a cub, then it's not even a young lion. And it learnt to catch the prey, and it devoured men. So then we're dealing with a young whelp than a cub. So from here, what we'll do is now then we'll look at Ecclesiastes, and we'll look at chapter 10, and we'll look at verse 16 and 17. So woe to thee, O land, when thy king is a child. So the ruler then is a child, and which this is then somebody then that's a child in knowledge. So then they're very little, like they have a small level of understanding. Then they're a child in understanding. And thy princes eat, so they learn in the morning, so they're still learning. So wisdom are given thou, O land, when the king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season, so in that appointed time, for strength, and not for drunkenness, so being staggered in darkness. So then you have a lot of these camps that are out here, then they call themselves teachers, but they're children in understanding. They're just being compared as that whelp, and it's still on milk and not even meat. Which, now from here, then we'll hit Hebrews, because this is talking about them right here, and I know they ain't gonna like this, but now then we're gonna go to Hebrews, and we'll look at chapter 5, and we'll go to verse 12 through 14. For when for the time you ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again, which is be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of milk and not strong meat. So then these camps, and that's all they can do is just, oh, then did you know the children of Israel, then they're black, or did you know this, or do that? Just the first foundational principles and the oracles, and that's where they're understanding, then where the borders and they finally reach at is, it's just foundational carnal things, those first principles, and not the strong meat. For everyone that uses milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. And it's the same ones that are running out there, then they don't even know what they're claiming, and they have that full-grown lion, and it's telling you that Judah, then it's a lion's whelp. For he is a babe. But strong meat belongeth to them that are full of age, so full-grown lion. So even those that by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So it's telling you right here, then, which this is signifying, with Judah, that they're not meeting their expectations and they're not doing their job. So, from here, then what we'll do is now then we'll look at Isaiah. And we'll go to chapter 3, and we'll look at verse 1 through 5. And then we'll extend down to verse 12. So, for behold, so the Lord of hosts doeth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, so the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water, so the mighty men and the men of war, so the judge, so the teachers and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient, so that's the elders, and the captains of 50 and the honorable men and the counselors and the cunning artificer and the eloquent orators, so then these ones that are skillful in the speech. And I will give children to be their princes. So that's just as we've seen, and the ones that need to be taught again, and they're ones that are in need of milk and not strong meat. And I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them, and the people shall be oppressed. So every one by another, and every one by his neighbor. So the children shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. So it's telling you that all of the confusion then that's going to be in the land, because the people that are now in rulership, then they have no sort of understanding. Then it's the same way with these camps and all of them that are out here teaching, spreading about all of this confusion, because then they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing. So, just even with this old line right here, then it's telling them that he couched down as an old line, then which the old lines, then they perish for lack of food, then he's an old line. So then we're going to head over to Job, and we'll look at chapter 4, and we'll go to verse 11. So the old line perishes for lack of prey, so lack of food, lack of knowledge, and the stout line's whelps are scattered abroad.
But it gets better. And it tells you more about this. It says Judah is a lion's whip. Well, if you know what that means, I believe I told people what some of this mean here, but we'll deal with that later. But he's just a young cub. That's all. We'll just leave it at that. He's a young cub. And it says, from that prey, my son, thou art gone up, and he stooped down, he crouched as, comparing a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? So even though you're young, you're crouching down like a young lion. But you ain't doing nothing. Because you're being an old lion. Gotta get to, well, let's do this. Judah. Let's do this, Judah. Yeah. Let's do this, Judah. We're going to look at this, Judah. We're going to look at this. Let's go down to 51. Jeremiah 51, going to go to verse 38. And I know they don't show you this, guys. It says, they shall roar together like lions. That's right. They're going to roar together like lions. They shall yell as lions' whips, because they just young cubs. Don't know nothing. Don't know absolutely nothing. That's why when a male lion comes back on the scene and he takes over that pride, guess what he kills? Those whips. But let's look at this. Let's move forward. So it tells you this. Whip for prey. That should go up, should stoop down as an old lion. But it says you this in verse 10. It says this. See, this is where their stupidity kicks in. This is where the stupidity on the chart really kicks in on this verse here. So you get your pencils ready, because this is where stupidity kicks in for all camps that believe in the chart. This is where it kicks in at, right here. It says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. That's why Judah, they say black Americans. On that alone. And to show you their stupidity on why they're going to bow down, because of what Judah had to do. And they didn't get it. They didn't get it based on their stupidity. That's why I sit there and tell you, camps is more stupid than Christians. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you about a camp. I'm talking about they some of the dumbest people walking the face of this earth. And you might be a camp, might be over, and same thing. I will always open it up for you to show you how dumb your doctrine is. But let's look at this. And the reason why I'm talking with a more irritated, because camps is just like that fly that keep flying around you, and you keep fanning, and it just keep flying around you. It's an irritant. And you deceiving people. That's why. But let's look at this. It said, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver. You see right here? See, it's telling you two different things. It's saying the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. So the scepter should not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. Talking about two different things. Telling you about two different things. And we need to know what these two different things are. Because it tells you this. Until Shiloh comes. Until Shiloh comes. That's the key. That's the key. And the reason why, I don't normally teach this openly, but I'm going to show you what Shiloh actually means. I know I don't even give it normally in the back, but I'm going to show you today what it actually means spiritually, and where you'll see what the truth is. Until Shiloh comes. Is the reason he's saying this. See, because the scepter shall not depart. So this is what's going to happen. Let's go to Isaiah. Let's look at something. Let's look at something. I don't know. I don't know why I keep putting A there. I don't know why I keep putting the other one there. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 53. Isaiah 53, we're going to pick it up at verse 4. And it says this. This is why, you want to know, this is why they bowed down and they took them upon what they did. Because this is what happened to Yahushua. It says, surely have he borne our grief, because he had to bore it. Meaning what? He was carried. He carried our sorrows, and yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. That's what happened to him. Who? Because that's what was going to happen to Judah. The scepter, that wasn't going to depart from you. This is going to happen to you. That's what he was saying. That is not going to depart from Judah. That rod, because that scepter is the rod. I don't know what part they missed there, but they missed it. That is not going to depart from Judah. Why do you think Yahushua got that to him? It says, it tells you right in Acts 7:37, or you can go to Acts 3:18. It tells you the same thing, that he's going to suffer. He has so fulfilled, because that scepter was not going to leave him. That was not going to go. That rod was not going to leave him. But guess what? It says nor a lawgiver. So he put something else in there which they too stupid to figure it out again. Too stupid to figure this out. But we're gonna show them what this means. So this is not speaking of Judah. They're speaking of a great leader. The same as like a prophet like Moses. Levi, to that effect. A lawgiver. Let's look at some of these things. A lawgiver. To show you the stupidity that they push. And we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 33 in verse 4. So you want to see what a lawgiver and how it works? Watch this here. It says, Moses commanded us a law. Oh, Moses is a Levi. He's a lawgiver. We understand that. Moses is a lawgiver. Even the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. So he's letting you know, and this went out through all the tribes. A lawgiver. But let's look at another one. Let's go to Joshua 1 in verse 7. Just check it out. It says, be thou strong and be very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law. Really? Who is the lawgiver? Which Moses? Oh, he's the lawgiver. My servant commanded thee, turn not from it. A lawgiver. He ain't Judah. But watch this. Until Shiloh comes. So we need to know spiritually what that says. Till Shiloh comes. So I got to give you actually the spiritual meaning. Because if I give you just the definition of it, most people will throw it off. You won't get it. But if you know spiritually what it means, it gives you a direct meaning on what this is saying. So we need to spiritually know what that means. And I want you to write this down. Even some of you camps that's in here right now, you write this down. And I'm going to show you the point on what that means. But Shiloh, this word right here. This word right here. Until Shiloh comes. Whose right it is. That's what that says. Until whose right it is come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. That's what it says. But I know you don't want to believe that. So I'm going to show you some precepts of this, just so you can get it, just so you can understand it. The reason I'm getting on Judah so much, because this here, they want to say it's us in America. That's stupidity. But let's look at this. Let's go to Judges. We're going to go to Judges and we're going to look at this. We're going to see that. Judges chapter 21. We're going to pick it up at verse 12. We're going to go to 21, pick it up at verse 12. And we're going to see this. Now, watch what happens here. It says, and they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins, and have known not no man by lying any male, and they brought them unto the camp of Shiloh. Whose right it is, which is in the land of Canaan. But it ain't done yet. We're not done yet. Let's look at another one, just so we can make sure we all got it understanding on this. Let's go to Joshua chapter 22. And these are your precepts to make sure you clearly understand what that verse is saying. It says, in the children of Reuben, in the children of Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh returned and departed from the children of Israel out of Shiloh, out of whose right it is, which was the land of Canaan, to go unto the country of Gilead, unto the land of their possession, where they were possessed according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. Because why? He gave them where? He gave them the land of Canaan. How do we know? We'll sit there and we'll check it out. That's whose right it is. That's whose right it is all the time. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 6. We're going to pick it up at verse 3. Watch what he says here. It says, I appeared unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob by the name of God Almighty, but by my name Christ I was not known to them. And I have also established my covenant with them, and to give them the land of Canaan, whose right it is, the land their pilgrimage, wherein they were strangers. That's who right it is. That's who right it is. She's telling you right up front. But we'll go ahead and just put a coffin on this one. Let's just put this one in the coffin. We're gonna go to Ezekiel. Let's go to Ezekiel and just kill it all the way there, all the way through. We're gonna go to Ezekiel chapter 20, actually chapter 21. We're gonna pick it up at verse 27. And just completely kill this altogether. And it tells you this: I will overturn. He gonna keep flipping it and flipping it and flipping it. He says, it shall be no more until he comes who right it is, and I will give it to him. Interesting, isn't it? Whose right it is. And whose right it is. It's not Judah. It's Christ. It's the word. It's not Judah. Judah is the one that's going to gather everybody. But Judah, those dudes on the corner tell you it's Judah. Let's look at this. This is why I'm just kind of going in on them. Because they'll sit there, they'll try to find, well, let's go find this, let's go try to find that, let's go try. So we just want to make sure Okay. I just want to make sure we just shut the door on this, because they'll go, oh, let's go try to find this, or they'll go try to find a newspaper or something to that effect to try to do this. So I just want to just show you to where we all upfront about this. So in Jeremiah chapter 32, we need to pick this up at verse 37. And we're going to see who's going to gather them. It says, remember, do you see it? Don't say Judah. You see it? Don't say Judah. I will gather them out of the countries whither I have driven them. Judah didn't drive us out. In my anger and in my fury, and in great wrath, and I will bring them again unto this place. I will cause them to dwell safely. Judah ain't doing this. Christ is. But they out there telling you Judah gonna do it. Again, it's the stupidity that goes on. Again, this is the stupidity that happens. So this is the problem. In the rod and the scepter is the one that comforts you. Let's make sure we got this. That's why he got the rod in him, because he gonna go through this. We're gonna go to Psalms 23 in verse 4. It says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thou art with me. Thy rod, which you gonna get it, and thy staff, they comfort me. Exactly the point. That's why that scepter is not going to depart from Judah. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting, isn't it? But it goes on a little bit more. It goes a little bit more. Let's go to John. Let's go to John chapter 14. We're going to go to, actually, we're in John 14:16. And he tells you this. He was from the tribe of Judah. Right out there, he said, I pray that the Father will give you another comforter. Why? Because he already know he getting ready to get that scepter laid on him. That rod. That ye may abide with you forever. Why? Because he know what's going to happen. He knows what's going down. So Shiloh comes, here's Christ, and gathering of the people be. And then he telling you this here to let you know a little bit more. It says, binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass coat unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in blood of grapes. Interesting, isn't it? See, the foal, binding his foal. We just tearing down technically what all this is. That's technically all I'm doing. Binding his foal. It's the beast of the burden to the vine, unto the vine. So he's binding that to the vine. Let's look at this a little bit closer. So we know what's going on. And we're going to look at this in 55, in Psalms 55. And we're going to look at this in verse 22. And it says, cast thy burdens upon the Spirit of God, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. That ain't talking about Judah. The Spirit of God. They ain't talking about Judah. He just used Judah, on which he did what he needed to do. Let's look at something. We're going to go to John chapter 15 and pick it up at verse 1. And Yahweh said this, and we see this as Christ actually speaking through him. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Exactly the point. He's the true vine. But when he have to put and lay down his law, he came and did what he had to do. Why? Because when we break the covenant, he's coming to take care of some things. But let's look at this. Let's go to 2nd Esdras. Let's look at something. 2nd Esdras. And we're going to see 2nd Esdras. We're going to go to chapter 5. We're going to pick it up at verse 23. And he says this. He said, O Lord, that beareth rule of every wood of the earth, and of all the trees thereof thou hast chosen thee one only vine. He didn't say he chose Judah. He chose Christ, which to bound us to him. See, and it tells you a little bit more about him. It tells you more about him, which we're going to look at. It says, bind to the vine as a coat. Unto the choice vine, he washed his garment in wine. His clothes with blood of grapes. Just a whole lot of stuff. His eyes should be as red wine, his teeth as white with milk. What is all this saying? His eyes. So his eyes is telling you nothing but his understanding shall be. His understanding shall be red. Shall be, and it says, shall be red with wine. Seeing the unrighteousness of faith. That's all he's talking about. His teeth, white with milk. His power with rage, but pure with milk. Pure with milk because it's pure of his learning. That's all he's talking about. And seeing to show you that he's not God, which you got Christians hold on to that doctrine. We're going to look at something. We're going to go to Luke chapter 2. We're going to pick it up at verse 52. And it says, and Yahushua increased in wisdom and stature in favor with God and man. So if he increased in wisdom, I thought he's God. He's all knowing. So that tells you the differences on what's going on there. It shows you that they're teaching you basically a lie. And then we have no other than Zebulun. They say Zebulun is the Guatemalans and the Panamanians are people. But what is their characterization?
Yeah, I got this one, Elder, and let me get this one right here. So then we got Genesis chapter 49 and verse 13. So Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. So, the first thing that we have to look at when we tear down this verse is then we got to address this sea right here. So we just start looking for these words to break down so we can get the understanding of what's going on here. So I talked about this in the last lesson in the sea, and going to have to look at this again so then we can always understand that when you're dealing with these seas in this sort of application right here, then you're looking at the life that's in that sea. So the multitudes of people, because it's talking about men. So what we're going to do is now then we're going to hit Psalms, and we'll go to chapter 104, and we'll hit verse 25. So Psalms 104 and 25. So is this great and wide sea, wherein are things creeping innumerable, so both small and great beasts. From here, then we have to head over to Habakkuk, because we're just all proving things through precepts. So we're going to go to Habakkuk, and we'll go to chapter 1 in verse 14 through 16. So Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 14 through 16. And makest men as the fishes of the sea, as the creeping things that have no ruler, so no guide over them. So they take up all of them with the angle, so they catch them in their net, and gather them in their drag. So therefore they rejoice and are glad. So then it's giving you then a similitude to trace it back to what's going on spiritually. Then it's even with these false teachers that are in these buildings, in these churches, then how then they're rejoicing, they're glad for it in these large congregations that they can end up snaring in their buildings. And you're fleecing the people, and you're taking these tithes and offerings, and you're getting fat, getting rich, because in these people then they've taken hold and they're snared up in these false doctrines. So this is what then we're tying this back to spiritually. So they take up all of them with the angle. And you remember these fish in the sea, and it's talking about men. So they catch them in their net and gather them in their drag. So therefore they rejoice and are glad, and therefore they sacrifice unto their net and burn incense unto their drag, because by them their portion is fat and their meat plenteous. Then that's what's bringing them to these riches. So, from here then now when we'll head over Psalms, and we'll go to chapter 140, and we'll pick it up at verse 5. So this is something that we need to write down and meditate on. So the proud have hid a snare for me. So these proud, and these is the ones that are teaching, but they're not teaching according to the gospel of the doctrine of Christ, and not to wholesome words, and they're teaching of themselves. So the proud have hid a snare for me, and cords. So they have spread a net by the wayside. They have set gins for me. So these traps and all of these false doctrines to get you caught up. And this is why then we have to be wary of these buildings. So then we head back over to Psalms 104 and 26. So there go those ships. And the reason, why then the ship is there spiritually, then when you go in these ships, then you're being carried away on many different knowledges. Then it's false knowledges, that is, too. So you're being carried away in these ships. So there go the ships. And there is that Leviathan, and it's that a crooked serpent. So then this is a man with the two-tongued doctrine. So there's that Leviathan whom thou hast made to play therein, because that's who's in there. Then we can run right here to Hebrews, and we'll look at chapter 9, and we'll hit verse 24. And it tells you right here clearly, for Christ has not entered into the holy places made with hands. Then he's not in those buildings, nor you are going to end up strong-arming and taking them in those buildings, claiming that, you're of Christ. And then you're going in there, then you're not one of his. For Christ has not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true. Because the temple of God, then it's the people. Then it's not in those buildings. And those buildings that are established with hands, and that's telling you, then it's these men with these two-tongued doctrines that are in there. So from here, then I want to show you something that's over in Matthew. So from here, then we'll hit Matthew, and we'll go to chapter 4, and we'll look at verse 18 down to 22. So Matthew chapter 4 and verse 18 to 22. In Jesus, so salvation walking by the sea of Galilee. So you remember what we know spiritually about these seas. Then this is talking about multitudes of people. So in salvation walking by the sea of Galilee, saw two brethren So Simeon called Peter and Andrew his brother, so casting a net into the sea. So you see what's going on. Then just what we say in Psalms 140 and 5. So then you're setting these gins and these traps for the people. For they were fishers. And he said unto them, so follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. So these teachers. And they straightway left their nets, so you left that behind, and followed him. So it tells you then they were teaching something else than before, then they joined unto salvation. And going on from thence, he saw other two brethren, so James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, and a ship with Zebedee their father, mending their nets. And he called them, and they immediately left the ship and their father. So then they left that Leviathan right in the ship and followed him. So then we're returning back over here to Genesis 49 and 13. So it's telling you, so Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for a haven of ships. So then all of these church buildings, and this is going to be the one that's going to be selling our people out. And his border shall be unto Zidon, which Zidon, then it means the place of hunting. So then this needs to be then a reminder and a self-reflection to all of us, and for the people that may be round about that are doing this, then you just rebuke them and you correct them, because then this is something that's going to get those people in trouble.
But then you have none other than Issachar. Oh, Issachar. Oh, Issachar. They say these are the Mexicans. These are the Mexicans alone should get on them about that alone. Putting themselves as Issachar. On that alone, they need to get in their butt. All them dudes on the corners teaching, saying that's Issachar, them Mexicans need to get in their butt. Because it's telling you, is a strong ass. That's why they need to get in their butt. It's telling you that you're a dumbass. You're a dummy. That's what that's telling you. And this, I'm Issachar. Now they're telling you you're a dummy. Crouching down between two borders. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say there. So, but then they say that's how they identify him. That's how they identify him. And Issachar is nothing more than a Harley. It's nothing more than a Harley. That's it. So it goes back to the same thing. How can they say Issachar is now Mexican? How did Issachar leave Jerusalem, go to Mexico, and his skin and hair texture changed? And they freely can worship whatever they want. Why they don't worship the God of Israel? Interesting, isn't it? See, Issachar is crouching down between two borders. See, in crouching, they need to know what that actually means. Because crouching means they extended and spread it between two borders. And here's why. They're strong ass. Tame or domestic. One that is patient to stupidity and will carry heavy burdens. That's what they did. And burdens to object of distress or a matter of concern. And it says, watch this. Issachar, we're going to just use Issachar. We're going to put Issachar where it said, in Issachar, we're just going to say he because that's what it's talking about. And Issachar saw that the rest was good, in the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. Now they taxing you. Now you being taxed. You paying for your rest. That's the stupidity. That's why I say Mexicans, I'm talking about they need to get in their butt behind that. The same as people go to churches that they call houses of God. And they paying thinking they have rest in there.
And just real quick before then we move on, there's some things that I wanted to bring out about Issachar. So I had some precepts of my own that I wanted to share. And it just goes back to what was being brought out about Issachar being the so-called Mexicans, then according to that 12 tribes chart. So, what I want to share is then we're going to head over to Genesis 46. And we will go to verse 13. And the sons of Issachar. So we got Tola and Phuva and Job and Shimron, which then we got exactly what we need right here. Then it's telling you that Job, then he comes from the tribe of Issachar. Now from here, then we're going to go to Job, the book of Job. We're going to go to chapter 30, and we're going to look at verse 30. And it reads, "My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burnt with heat," which that has then a whole nother spiritual meaning within itself. Then we're going to stick to the natural understanding behind this. Then Job, then he's telling you very clearly that his skin is black upon him. But, these 12 tribes charts and these camps that push that, then they're telling you that the Issachar and these so-called Mexicans, and that can't be the case because Job, then he's telling you, then he comes from that lineage that his skin is black upon him. Then the Mexicans, and that's a mix of then the Spaniards, so the people that are from Spain, and the Native Americans that were already over here. Then that's where the Mexicans come from. And then, when we get into this even some more, our people, then when we went into captivity, then it makes it very clear that, the camps, then they like to just focus on a white man, then they wasn't the only people that our folks went into captivity to. Then the Mexicans, and they own slaves too. And you can go down to Mexico and you can look at some of the monuments that they have there, and you can look at some of the history museums that are there, and you can see that our people, then we went into slavery over there as well. So then we got carried out of Jerusalem and scattered into the four corners of the earth. And the Mexicans, and they were also one of the people that had us in captivity. So that's what I wanted to share.
And Dan, we really had to hone in on Dan, because Dan, they don't even have Dan on the chart. But, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan should be a serpent by the way, an altar in the path by the horse heels, so the rider shall fall backwards. We're not going to deal with that because they're not dealing with it. So we're not going to deal with that one. But then we have Gad. We have old Gad. Gad is a troop shall overcome. But Gad, they say, is the North American Indians. Gad. He's the seventh son. In the first by Leah's handmaid, I believe that's Ziplah. That's who he is. But I don't know how they come up with this stupidity on about who these people, or how they lay them out. But let's look at something. Let's see something. And Gad is Gad, a troop shall overcome. Meaning what? Shall overcome him. Shall overcome him. But he shall overcome at the last. So a lot of them gonna get caught up. But what is it saying? So people in my Daniel class, they should know this one. We're gonna go to Daniel. We're gonna pick it up at chapter 7. And we're gonna go right over here to 25. Because this is what's gonna come. This is what's gonna happen. And it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and to think to change laws, times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and dividing the times. What's going to happen with a lot of them? Troop. Because it's saying they're going to be overcome by a troop. Troop. Troop is just an army of doctrines. Shall overcome them. An army of doctrines just going to overcome them. A troop shall overcome. An army of doctrines just going to overcome them. And then we have good old Asher. We got good old Asher. Asher is a whole nother ball game. See, they call them the Colombians and the Ugarians or whatever they want to call them, which is still again stupid again. But this is who they say they are. He's one of the sons of Zebulun also. Asher. But it says something particular about Asher which you can learn and understand what's going on. See, because Asher is even acting like his forefathers. Here. So let's look at this. It says, his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. That's interesting, isn't it? See, the same thing is what Asher, his forefathers did here. When we go to Genesis chapter 10, we're going to look at 10. We're going to park over here at verse 11. See, because Asher went forth out of the land and built Nineveh in the city of Rehoboth and Khalid. See, this is what he did. This is what he did. And he was seeking to get these royal dainties. He liked these. He liked the luxuries of these meats and doctrines and things. And the Bible tells you clearly what not to go after. It tells you clearly what not to go after. Let me see. I got that one wrong. PR. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, Psalms 23. And we want to look at verse 3. And it says, be not desirous for his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. But he's going to be fat and yield royal dainties. Isn't that interesting? And then when you get over here to verse 6, it says, eat thou not the bread of him hath an evil eye, neither desires of his dainty meats. It's telling you right up front. Don't get caught up on this. Not how you going to figure out who they are. These things are going to befall you in the last days. These things can get you tripped up. Not, oh, this is you. Oh, we're going to tell you, you did this. This is you. No, that's stupidity. Then we got none other than Naphtali. Naphtali. Naphtali, a whole different ball game. There's another son of Bela, the one who Reuben was banging his brother's mother. But it says, is a hen let loose, and not understanding spiritually on what that's saying, hen let loose. But we want to understand spiritually what this stuff is saying so we can be direct about what we teaching. But a hen let loose, meaning spiritually that it's a vagabond. It's a beggar. one that would sacrifice the truth to please people around him. And he ain't let loose. And it's going to tell you why. He will give goodly words. But loose, we need to understand also. Because a hen let loose is one that excluded from wisdom. Let loose. He excluded from the wisdom. You excluded from this. He'll give you all these goodly words and all this stuff, but he excluded from wisdom. And this is the problem that we go through when you're dealing with people. In Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 19, is this. It says, thou shalt not rest or wrestle judgment. Thou shalt not respect a person, neither take gift, for gift doeth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. But don't pervert theirs, because they're going to give you some good ones. So they can constantly get everything from you. That's the kind of people they are. That's the kind of people that'll get you caught up. Even when you look at Isaiah chapter 30 and picking it up at verse 10, it tells you pretty much the same thing on what we're going to see. Actually, it's already highlighted. It says, we say unto the seer, see not. Unto the prophet, prophesy unto us things, prophesy not unto us things, right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceit. Goodly words. Goodly words. And they don't have no wisdom in them. None. That's why you sit there and see, even Paul touched on this. But people always want to tie it to somebody else, but not tying it to what the truth is. It says in 1 Timothy, we need chapter 3. Why did it go to 2? Or did I click 2 by accident? I might have did it by accident. But we're going to look at verse 2. It says, for men shall be lovers of themselves, of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient, to parents, unthankful, unholy. This is them. Because they got goodly words for you. Without normal affliction, truth breakers, false accusers. I'm talking about everywhere you look in here, they're there. They're there. Now, the one that people should have been focused on, you don't even see him in the chart. I'm gonna show you again on the chart. The one you should have been focused on. You see here, and you see they put his sons in there, but you don't see Joseph. And then they said that, well, he got his 2 sons. No. You don't have Joseph. The father of Manasseh and Ephraim. But they still going to try to change that up. But you don't even see them over in here. And then they want to say Joseph is nobody. Because you don't see him in here. It says Joseph here is the one you should have been focused on. Joseph is a fruitful broth. Even a fruitful broth by a well. Letting you know he's constantly being fed. Whose branches running over the wall. That's who he is. But they'll tell you the stupidity and tell you that Ephraim is the Puerto Ricans, which we're going to deal with in 1 second. And they tell you Manasseh is the Cubans. Stupidity on top of stupidity. Based on the statement. Because they probably seen this verse here. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 48, and this is probably where they got screwed up. Genesis chapter 48, verse 4. And he said, behold, I will make thee a fruitful and a multitude thee, and make thee a multitude of people, and will give thee and give this land to thy seed for an everlasting seed. But why are we looking at this? Because we need to see what he's going to say in verse 5. It says, and now thy two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, because he's talking to Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came into thee into Egypt. He's saying now are mine. These boys is mine. These are my seed. Why? Because Joseph went into the land of captivity and he succeeded. So the same as when you see in Genesis, actually better yet, let's go there and look at it, because we're still in Genesis. So when you go to Genesis chapter 4, and why he's saying that is what we're supposed to do. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 7, let me put that a different color. It says, if thou doest well, thou shalt not be accepted. If thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. It says, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Did not Joseph do that while he was in Egypt? Was no man greater than Joseph than just their master? That was it. But Joseph ran everything. So Joseph is the main one that received the double portion. Let's look at this. That's why Joseph received a double portion. But they so stupid. Well, let me deal with this and we'll go to it. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 48, verse 22. It says, moreover, I have given thee one portion above thy brother, which I take out of the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow. Who received this? Joseph. Joseph was clearly in his speaking that Joseph received a double portion, and they'll sit there and telling you something else that's totally a lie. That's totally a lie. See, this is the problem that they constantly like to push, and they won't show you these scriptures. Either they don't know they're there, or they just too stupid to figure it out. In Hosea chapter 7, picking up at verse 8, it says, Ephraim have mixed itself with the people. They like to use this. This is what they like to use. They use this exact word, mix itself with the people. Ephraim is a cake unturned. Unturned. This is the stupidity that they use. And we see the reason why he did what he did. But just to show you the stupidity that went on with this. And we'll go to Revelation. We'll look at Revelations chapter 3. Revelation chapter 3. We're going to go to 15. 15, and it says that, and his feet shall be of fine brass, as if it was burned out of furnace, and sound of many waters. But we know that it's one thing about Christ, but I think we still need that other one that was the wrong one. That's the one we want. 3:15 is right here. It says, I know thy works, and thou art neither cold nor hot. I will spew thou wert cold or hot. And he's telling you more. Because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew you out of my mouth. The same thing as with Ephraim. He was a cake unturned. So if he's a cake unturned, he's talking about the knowledge that he contained in the knowledge of God. I'll show you this, so we're going to look at it. We're going to go to Luke, we're going to go to Leviticus, we're going to pick it up at chapter 2 and go to verse 4. To understand why it's talking about a cake unturned. It's talking about the knowledge of God. So now we're going to see, and this is talking about the bread. So it's saying, if ye bring an oblation of meat offering, baking in the oven, it should be unleavened cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, or unleavened wafers anointed with oil. If it's a meat offering. Showing you again, it's not talking about some flesh of people or flesh of an animal. But he says more here. And he says, And if thy oblation be meat offering baking in a pan, it should be a fine flour, unleavened, mingled with oil. Why? Thou shalt part it in pieces and pour it thereon. It is a meat offering. And the oblation be a meat offering baking in a frying pan. It shall be made of fine flour with oil. Why? Because they got to be cooked on both sides to make sure that you are fully understanding what's going on. You fully know how to do what you need to do. And what he was, they saying you as a cake unturned. You're not done in knowledge. You're still stupid, technically. So verse 12, it says this. It says, and as the oblation of the first fruits shall be, shall offer them unto the Spirit of God, but ye shall not be burnt on the altar for a sweet Savior, because it's according to your knowledge. It's according to your knowledge. They do the same thing even with Esau. They go to 25:25 and they say Esau came out red. So he's a white man. So he's the white man because he came out red. This is the problem that we have. So we go through this issue. We go through this issue as we're going back and forth. But Joseph is the one they should have focused on, because he's a fruitful broth. And he was carried away captive. And when he was carried away captive, this happened here. Jeremiah, when he was carried away captive, in 29, verse 4. 29, verse 4. Let's look at this. It says, thus says the Lord of hosts, God of Israel, unto all that is carried away captive, whom I have caused to be carried away unto Jerusalem, unto Babylon. He said this, build ye houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. It's telling you right up front what to do. Joseph was carried away captive based on the jealousy of his brothers, based on the dream that he told them. It even tells you Paul even breaks this down for you. We go to Acts chapter 7 and verse 9. And you'll see Paul talks about it, and I can even show you where it even happened. In 7 and 9, it says, and he had spoken these things while they beheld. Actually, that's the wrong one. We want 7. Why did it go there? We want 7 and 9. It says, and the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph unto Egypt, but God was with him. It's telling you right up front. They sold him. We can go way more into this. They sold him. These are the things that people will sit there and they'll tell you constantly, differently about what's going on. But those progenitors that we see, and you see where that promise went to. Joseph inherited the promises. And that's why he dwelt safely while he was in the land of confusion. And we have none other than Benjamin.
All right, so then we got Benjamin. So then we're going to go over to Genesis 49 and 27. So Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. So then we have that similitude here. And he's going to destroy and he's going to devour as a wolf. In the morning he shall divide the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. So just as with a natural similitude, then there's no sort of agreement between the sheep and the wolf. Then the wolf, then he's going to devour that sheep. So this is the characteristics that's being attributed to Benjamin, and we're going to get some precepts to get the understanding of what's going on here. So we're going to go to Ezekiel, and we'll go to chapter 22 and verse 25 through 27. So Ezekiel 22 and 25 through 27. So there's a conspiracy of her prophets in the midst thereof. So like a roaring lion, so it's being compared to a roaring lion, which we know that lion, then it's equating to strength and power. So it's talking about these men, so they're giving out their voice. And their words is destroying and devouring these souls of these men. And this is what's going on. So they have devoured souls, and they have taken the treasure and precious things, and those holy things that was commanded unto us, and they're exchanging that out for stuff that doesn't profit, for lies. They have made her many widows in the midst thereof. So a lot of people have been separated from God because of these lies that they've been held on to now. Her priests have violated my law and have profaned my holy things, and they have put no difference between the holy and profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean, and have hid their eyes their understanding from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned among them. So her princes in the midst thereof are like wolves, raving, so they're devouring the prey to shed life and to destroy souls to get dishonest gain. So that's why they're destroying the souls of these people. So then we're going to head over to Acts, and we'll go to chapter 20, and we'll hit verse 28 through 30. And it reads, So take heed therefore unto yourselves, and to all of the flock, so this is a warning, over the which the Holy Ghost has made you overseers, so to feed the church of God, so the people of God, which he has purchased, so redeemed with his own life, so that lifestyle. And this is the warning to these men that are the feeders, the pastors. For I know this, that after my departing shall grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Because this is what they're going to do in verse 30. Also of your own selves shall men arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away disciples after them. So then they're going to start building their own flocks so they can fleece them and make merchandise of them. So right over here in 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 1 through 3. But there were false prophets among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bringing upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of, and through covetousness shall they with vain words, so these lies, make merchandise of you, so getting money up out of you with the false doctrine, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. So this is the information that was imparted unto Benjamin. So just right over here in verse 28 of Genesis 49, it tells you, so all these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is that their father spoke unto them and blessed them, so gave them that understanding. Every one according to his blessing given of understanding, he blessed them. So then right here with Genesis 49, then he's given them all information of what they're going to encounter. And from here, then this is where we're going to end up stopping the lesson. And I know I said that there was going to be a part where we have an identifier that you can always go on to see who these people are, as far as an identifier, because 49 is not a 12 tribes chart. But, because we had ran long, then we're going to end up ending it here, and then we'll get that next part in the next teaching. So I may end up hitting a zoom up, then it just depends on which way I'm led. But this is where we're getting ready to stop. So then I bid you all then a shalom and a peace.